this lawsuit? Where is it going to go? How are states going to prove that Meta is actually having a harmful impact on young children? To expand on this conversation and this topic, I'd like to bring onto the program now Matthew Dolman of the Dolman Law Firm. Matthew, thanks so much for being with us here tonight. So I just want you to start with, I guess, this first question that I have is, how are these states expecting to prove in a court of law that Meta is actually violating its uses and also causing harm to children?
Sure. Thank you for having me. You know, in 2021, there was a Facebook whistleblower, Frances Haugen, who appeared before Capitol Hill. And what she testified to is that internal Facebook documents showed they prioritized profits over the safety of the adolescents, the children, the youth that were using Facebook. And now we're looking at Instagram. Meta is the parent company for Facebook and Instagram. They knew they're creating an algorithm that is meant to addict young children. And we're looking at, between the age of 13 to 17, 62% of them use Instagram on a regular basis. And by regular use, we're talking about 2 hours a day. How are we going to prove this? I mean, this is not an easy concept, but when we look at it, we look at the algorithm, we look at Facebook's internal documents, and we know that Meta has known about this for years. They know, there's studies that actually show the reaction that the young children have, that adolescents have, the effect on dopamine is similar to playing the slots in Las Vegas. Think about that for a moment.
So Matthew, just want to stay on this topic then. How long has this been going on? As you said, there was a whistleblower a few years ago that brought this concern up, but now the attorneys general's banding together. Clearly, there is enough evidence. Where does this case move forward with now? Because Meta, I know, is not going to go down without a fight.
Meta's not going to go down without a fight, and there's also free speech constraints, and there's going to be arguments going both ways. But this has been going on since October of 2022, when the first lawsuits were filed in Northern California. So right now, there's active litigation going on. It's called an MDL. This is multi-district litigation. This is a mass tort. Now, to kind of juxtapose that to a class action, think of, your Dell battery on your laptop. Everyone has the same exact injury. In a mass tort, there's different severities of injuries, different degrees of it. And whether we're looking at suicidal ideation, self-harm, body dysmorphia, depression, anxiety, there's a whole host of issues associated with social media use and social media harm. These individual lawsuits were classified into multi-district litigation in front of one judge in the Northern District of California back in October of 2022. The litigation is still in its infancy. This is a fluid situation. I think it's going to take 3 to 4 years for it to fully play out. But I expect in the end that plaintiffs are going to be victorious in this case. You have a whole legion of adolescents that frame their worldview based on the lens of social media, based on the filters of social media. So when we look at unrealistic body proportions, and that's not just girls, and not just women, this is also affects young boys and growing into men. But let's look at those who have teenage daughters and imagine that their view of their body is based on likes. It's based on what others on social media are saying to them. It's awful. And the effect is just, it's astounding. And more studies come out saying the same exact thing. It's causing significant harm to a whole host of harms to our adolescents.
This entire lawsuit could be like opening up a can of worms for so many different companies, because of course, Meta, social media, but there's so many other apps that fall under that similar category. Are they doing things differently than Meta where they have not been addressed yet? Or do you think that other companies are going to be facing similar litigation soon?
Well, that's two questions. So have they done anything to address these concerns? They've taken certain remedial measures. I wouldn't call these whole-scale remedial measures. Again, these are companies that care a lot more about profit than they care about the harms that they cause. But we're looking at the very same issues with ByteDance, which is the owner of TikTok. In multiple states, ByteDance, or TikTok rather, has been banned from devices from federal government employees, state government employees. Many universities have banned it. It is a concern because the Chinese government may have access to sensitive information contained within your device, and they may be able to force ByteDance to divulge that information. Could it be a threat to our national security? I mean, these are all questions, but the bigger question, the paramount concern, and why you have me on tonight, is discuss the threat to adolescents and the harm that it caused. And they're very similar. That litigation has not really started on an individual basis in terms of individual cases, but states have filed lawsuits against ByteDance.
Now, Meta here kind of defending itself, saying that it's introducing some tools to support families, teens, to be able to better navigate on its platforms. Is this enough for Meta, or are they going to have to completely redesign their entire algorithm, so to speak?
Well, they're going to argue free speech constraints. And how far can we go to limit free speech? Well, the contrast of that argument is they haven't really done anything. They've done very little. These remedial measures that they've taken have done very little to address the issues that we're seeing. And now we have school districts. We have over 118 school districts going to be, as soon as tomorrow, we believe we're going to exceed 120 school districts around the United States that have now filed lawsuits against Meta and also ByteDance. And I think that's going to grow exponentially over the next year or two. Their remedial measures of putting specific filters on TikTok and on Facebook and Instagram, in this case, we're talking about Facebook and Instagram, is very little. They're looking to attract those between the 13 and 18 subset. The goal is to addict these individuals. And part of the individual lawsuits, unlike the lawsuits brought by the Attorney General, are focusing on actually product liability theory because these algorithms they were designed to create addiction.
So I know in this lawsuit, we're focusing more on young adults, teenagers becoming addicted to these social media apps, but can the same be applied to older users, people that are maybe more so in their mid-20s, mid-30s, and so on? Can they feel the same effects? Do you think that lawsuits regarding that age group are something that we could see in the future?
To answer that question, I don't think so. Do I think the same addiction is going to occur? Yeah. Do I think that they have the same fragile minds that are not fully developed, that do not understand the risk associated with using the device? No, they probably cannot appreciate the dangers that they face, the harms that they face by sitting on and scrolling through video after video of just inane garbage. And I'm not here to attack social media. I mean, there's both sides to this, and I use social media to an extent. I try not to stay on it too long, but adults can appreciate the danger. Those between the ages of 13 and 17 certainly can't. And when they say they limit it to only 13-year-olds, well, how strong is that filter? It's very easy for those under the age of 13 to get on there. In fact, 8 different attorney generals have addressed that in their own individual lawsuits. Remember, only 33 joined one lawsuit. There's 8 other individual lawsuits, the last being the state of Florida, which filed theirs yesterday.
And Matthew, just one final question before I let you go here. As you said,
Sure.
This is going to take some time before we find a closure, before we get to that conclusion of this case. What comes next in the near future? What are the next steps from the Attorney General's side and also from Meta's side?
I think from the Attorney General's side, there's going to be some uniformity between the claims from each individual respective state and the individual claims that have been filed within the multi-district litigation pending in the Northern District of California. Remember, the Attorney Generals also filed their lawsuits in the Northern District of California. What's coming next is discovery. These are very early in the lawsuit. We're going to see what Meta's defense is going to be, but we already know what it's going to be. It's going to center around free speech and free speech constraints. They're going to go, they're going to focus on Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act, which is like a sword and shield for internet providers, only rephrase, for internet companies who host third-party content on their websites. So they're going to say, we're not responsible for this. And we put up enough safety measures to prevent harm to those of the 13, 17 subset. Is that true? No. Is it? It's absurd. And I don't think they're going to be victorious, but we shall see. And we shall see. I think this is a very favorable jurisdiction for plaintiffs. And I think eventually, over the next 3 to 4 years, the plaintiffs will be victorious in this case. Now, does that mean? Does it mean serious financial consequences to Meta? Is this going to hurt their overall stock price? I don't know. What other penalties could there be? Could it be a complete revamp of Facebook and Instagram? I hope so. I surely hope so.
And I think that's going to be what's most interesting to see is what actually comes out of these lawsuits. Sure, the attention's there. Meta well aware that people are coming after them, but what's
and where does it stop? Does it go? Is it next? What's next? Snapchat? Does it go into next device? And what's the next app that's going to be popular a year or two from now? So we don't know that, but I think there's going to have overarching consequences, and I think we're going to see this play out over the next 3 to 5 years. It's going to be pretty exciting.
Well, Matthew Dolman of the Dolman Law Firm, we appreciate you being here with us on Live Now from Fox, helping us break down
very much for having me.
This new lawsuit. And as you said, this is going to be a few years now that we're going to be monitoring it. So we hope to bring you back here as we continue to dissect this case.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.